Welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and of course a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. This is Elizabeth Townsend Guard. I'm a law professor at Tulane University Law School, and I just wanna quilt. So today we talked to Leah-day. Leah has been on our show before. She is so famous, so awesome, so amazing. We all learn from Leah. But today she talks about self-publishing and also a little bit about her Facebook group, which, if you all have been listening to the news, she ended. So this is done a few weeks, about 2 weeks ago, when she was thinking about closing the Facebook group, and gives us a little insight into why she did it. The sound on my side's a little weird, which is completely unusual. I'm not sure why that happened, but it's an important enough interview that we're airing it anyway.
I'm so happy you're here. So we're going to talk about, what is today? We are in July, Elizabeth Townsend Guard and Leah-day, and we're talking about two topics today. We're talking about self-publishing, and we're also talking about patterns, right? Does that sound like what we're doing?
Yeah.
All right, and for preservation purposes, where are you calling from?
I am in Shelby, North Carolina.
Awesome. Hold on. No reason for lights to be on. Okay. Cool. Awesome. All right. Self-publishing. We have been looking into self-publishing because we're writing a couple of books, and we had looked at your book, and it's so beautiful. The one that you sent, the Walking Foot book, it's just so pretty. And so I reached out to you to ask you about self-publishing, and you had really specific thoughts about it. And it turned out that the research we're doing was matching what you already are doing, which has really made us feel like we could research, but it made us feel a lot more comfortable. So tell me about sort of publishing in general. You've published a lot of different ways, I think, right?
Yeah. I've published every which way you possibly can. So first couple of books, I did 100% self-publish and laid out the book myself. I did the photos myself. I did the covers myself, whole 9 yards. And then I had it printed by a very small printer. I think it was book11.com, something like that. And it was a tiny little mini book. It wasn't, a big normal size book. It was a little 5.5 by 8.5 mini book. So that was a good first experience, kind of getting my toes wet into it. I cannot emphasize enough that I really do think it's important to do all of the steps yourself.
Yeah. Why do you think so? Why do you think that is? Why was that first experience good for you?
Well, I mean, it is hard. I first can definitely preface that this is tough. It's a skill. It's just like learning how to piece and learning how to quilt. It is a process, but it's good because when you lay the book out yourself, or you can also pay someone to do it for you, but when you do it yourself, there's no extra cost. You gain the skill, and then let's say you do two books that are fairly similar. So, these were two mini books that were identical size. And you can basically kind of wash and repeat. Take that same original file, save it again, change out the photos. You've got yourself a second book. And once you build that template, it's very, very easy. Right. And so if you do the layout yourself and the photos yourself, or if you hire someone, you pay someone else to do those steps, you retain the rights of your book. And that is so important. We're talking about copyright.
That's right.
It's important.
Because you took the photographs, you laid it out. There was no one else competing for that copyright, which means you controlled what happened to that book.
Yeah, and those books are still in production. I basically uploaded them to Amazon CreateSpace. That's a print-on-demand publisher. So they sell on Amazon. I also buy copies from Amazon and sell them on my site. They're fairly old. They're several years old. If a publisher had printed them, they would have done one print run and dropped them and never reprinted them again, and then they would not be available anymore. The fact that they're still available and can be printed and purchased, I still can make a few bucks off of them every month. That's a good thing. Having a backlist of books, even if they're 10 years old, that adds value, and that is so important for quilters, professional quilters that are getting into this and wanting to write books and go that whole 9 yards. unless you want books to be, kind of here and then gone, it really is better to self-publish and retain your rights more than anything else.
So tell us other ways that you've published.
Sorry, I had a timer set. Okay. So another way I published, so I did 365 free motion quilting designs, did that originally all by myself. Then I paid someone else to do a second edition to do the layout for me, paid someone to do all the photos. So, when you start talking about paying for someone, you have to have some cash up front. I probably paid about $1,100 to have the book laid out, like arranged and look very professional. It looked like a regular normal quilt book that you would buy off the shelf at Barnes & Noble or wherever. That can cost a pretty penny, and I couldn't afford that when I first got started. So that's another reason to do it yourself. But if you are at the place where you can invest, paying someone else to do it helps because it saves you some time. You can go be writing the next book while somebody else is laying out the first book. So had that done and then published it, and I printed those copies myself. So in this case, I was paying another printer, and this was 4-color print group. And you can contact them as long as you do, I think, over 250 copies. Yeah. You can print with them. And they will print in China, or I did China once, I think it was Hong Kong, and then Korea the second time. It takes months and months and months for the books to ship, but the print quality is gorgeous. It's the same printer that everybody else uses. You're not, using some kind of, weird printer. These are professional quality books, and you're going to get the best price. Now, that being said, in order to get the best price, you need to be able to buy 2,000-3,000. And then this starts getting into logistics. Do you have space to hold 3,000 books?
So did you ordered that many books?
Yeah.
That's craziness. Was that like a moment of like, whoa, like I'm ordering a lot of books?
Well, the very first book that I wrote, I ordered 1,000. Yeah. The second book I ordered 1,000, and I'm able to move those books. And the more that you feel like you can move, and you want to be able to move those within a calendar year before, at least in the United States, I should preface, before December 31st, because whatever is still on the shelf, you can't write off the cost of, because technically you haven't sold it yet. It's still product on your shelf. So you want to estimate and try and figure out how much you can buy that you can conceivably sell in that space of time and not have tons and tons. You don't want 3,000 books on your shelf on January 1st. You really don't. So, you kind of have to estimate that properly. And it is very tough to deal with 3,000 books at once. I basically had a semi-truck park on my street and drop off a pallet at the end of my driveway. My driveway is like 45 feet long, and it's gravel. I mean, it wasn't pleasant, and it was raining. So you have to think through these logistics.
That's craziness. So when you publish a book, do you try to publish it then in January so you get that full 12 months to sell off the books?
Theoretically, yeah. Or I might just order in smaller batches. So that's how I was doing it. That's not how I'm doing it now, simply for that reason. And also the investment. I mean, shelling out for 3,000 books I think those books were like $4 a piece. So that's $12,000 at once. Just poof, it's gone. And until you get those books in stock, you can't really sell them and be recouping that loss. So, this is where small business loans can come involved. And then there's risk. So if they are not selling, and if you've kind of overestimated the number that you purchased, this is potentially business killing mistakes. I'm just saying. Right. So be careful if you decide to go that route. I would say that your margin's going to be the best. And you have the ability then to go to distributors and go to quilt shops and kind of be able to sell to all different channels within the quilt world. What I found, though, doing that is the juice just wasn't worth the squeeze. It was too much work. In order to actually be able to play that game, I had to then hire a whole team. I had to have a warehouse to take the books and be able to take the shipment. I had to have a warehouse to be able to ship to distributors. And, it's like it was just cost on top of cost on top of cost that it ended up not being worth it.
Yeah.
So what I did was I took that book and I offered it to a couple different publishers in the quilt world and said, hey, would you like to, have the rights to print this? I will retain my copyright. I will retain my rights to the images and this document. If you ever decide that you don't want it anymore, it's still mine. And so technically that's hybrid.
Yeah.
So I retain the rights also to sell digitally. So I still sell that book as a PDF download. The CNT Publishing is who picked it up, and that book is 365 free motion quilting designs. So they are printing it. They're covering the cost of printing. They're putting it out on quilt shops.
Yeah.
Because I did all the work, and we basically used the original layout that I paid for, I made a higher percentage. So instead of getting
finished book, and that's really interesting. That's very interesting. Now, would you have done that if you hadn't? So that happened because you did it the way you do it. Would you do that again with CNT Publishing? Like, is that an interesting, or is that just a weird fluky thing because you already had the book done and you'd already?
Yeah, it was an experiment. I wanted to know if hybrid could work. I was hearing a lot of things about hybrid, in kind of different spaces, more like fiction writing and, more traditional, like mainstream authors and that kind of thing. I'd just been hearing about stuff like that. I thought it was worth a try. It kind of looked like, oh, okay, well, here's a book I've got. The sales are still steady. I sold 12,000 copies of that book, even in first edition. Then the second edition, I sold another 6,000 books. I mean, this is a popular book. It's solid. So I knew I could offer it to CNT and know it was going to continue.
And you knew there wasn't a risk because
no.
As much as you wanted, they weren't putting much into it. And it was a good relationship for both of you because of sort of what the situation was.
Yeah. Now, that being said, whenever you hand something to someone else, you lose control.
Usually.
And that might drive you crazy. It drives me crazy. So I lost control over what the book looked like. And when they're reprinting, the covers kind of came out a little dark. And I mentioned something about it. So hopefully the next reprinting will be a little lighter and brighter. Also, they didn't update the back cover text. And so there was still a mention of it being coil bound, of it being spiral bound. And I was like, guys, this isn't a spiral bound book. Why is this still there? So yes, I'm neurotic, but yeah.
But it makes you because I've had that happen with books and it's just so infuriating because you're just like, oh no,
yeah,
that mistake in there, right?
Yeah. And then, it has affected the Amazon reviews. Somebody was like, oh, well, I read on the back cover, this was supposed to be spiral bound and it's perfect bound. It's not, there's no spiral here or whatever. So yeah. And I mean, very few people have complained, but even still, it's one of those little nuancy kind of things that was just a little annoying. However, I should also add that relationship then led to something else. And they actually just arrived yesterday. And it's a calendar. Let me go run and get it.
Calendar, right.
So because we did that hybrid publish, we were able to create a calendar. And so this is a little perpetual flip calendar, and it is all the 365 designs printed.
Oh, I totally love it.
And then you just flip it over and you get a different design every day of the year. And it's really sweet. So,
and it's actually great because it's just the calendar, you can use it any year.
Yeah, it's perpetual. So you can use it year after year. Just don't rip off the pages.
So I will still be purchasing that because then you can just practice that one thing that day and be like, okay, I did my thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is Google the name of the design. The videos are still up. You can still easily find them on YouTube. So you can not only, get your design every day, you can see the little tutorial on how to stitch it.
I love it.
It's awesome.
I love it. Wow, that's really cool. I think that's so great. All right, so that led to that. So the original, so for those that are, if we're going to post this, so the original copyright was yours. Yes. Then you had a licensing agreement with CNT Publishing that gave them the license to use it, but you retained the copyright. Then you guys decided, we'll make a calendar, which is a derivative work of the original one. And who holds that copyright? Is that yours as well? Or and
in fact, actually, I wanted to mention that the copyright listed on this, I kind of don't agree with. So I am the it says text and artwork copyright Leah-day. Great.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine. But then they added a little caveat here that I think is just a little bit weird. The designs may be used to make items for personal use only and may not be used for the purpose of personal profit. Items created to benefit non-profit groups or that will be publicly displayed must be conspicuously labeled with the following credit. Design copyright 2018 Leah-day quilting from Quilting Designs Perpetual Calendar from C&T Publishing. Oh my gosh, that's still not going to happen.
They didn't talk to you about that before they put it on?
And I'm kind of like, guys, no way. I don't expect a long arm quilter. I don't expect a home machine quilter. I don't expect anybody to sit there and go and like write that whole big of text, big thing of text on their quilts. And not only that, but it's so silly. Like, quilting can be, a quilt, you might not even expect to sell it, but you might end up selling it.
Right.
It might not end up being personal use, but everyone, I think, sets out to do this for themselves. Yeah. And aside from that, you can't even control something like stitching out a design. It's more
like a technique. I mean, it's like a shuffle or a flap in tapping, right? Like it's more of a technique. I mean, you may design something that people go, oh, I've never seen that and I want to do it. But when is it expression and when is it just the idea of it? Or is it more like a fact? Or is it more like, a painting?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I think of your stuff as your I mean, I could be wrong. It seems to me that what you're doing, and you do a huge service to the quilting industry right now, is you make people feel confident to learn and teach and do and be able to do this thing that is so difficult to do. That your revenue comes from the books and from joining whatever and selling whatever you sell, but it's not controlling the techniques that you're teaching them.
If I tried to control the techniques, I'd alienate everybody. I mean, and I've seen, quilters that get into that alienation, or that's just how they naturally are. I don't know, but I don't want to buy from them, and I don't want to be anywhere near around them. This world is big enough for everybody, number one. And then number two, when you create something, like this that has value, when you create tons and tons of designs, it is supremely selfish to try and keep that to yourself, and I want people to use them. And it's not that I'm like super, super angry. It was just, I was kind of surprised. And the whole personal use only thing.
Now, what's that about? Why are people doing it? So I kind of remarked, and the fact that, there's a thing called Creative Commons, which is a huge licensing scheme that allows people to say, like, you may use this, no attribution required, or no derivative works, whatever. Like, you can just put stuff out there. But the quilting industry doesn't seem like they know about it or have adopted it. So you get this really weird, like, I just interviewed somebody who's got a Facebook group, nice lady. She only has Social Security, but she doesn't charge anything for anything she does, and she just wants it out in the world. She's she's got 16,000 followers on her Facebook group, and then she puts all rights reserved on the material that she has. And it's like, I was like, do you know what that means? She's like, no, I don't. But I think I'm supposed to put that down. And, I don't understand that divide. I don't understand the kind of possessiveness, because I feel like it's weird. It seems, it seems like it's missing what the game of copyright is at this point.
Yeah, and it strikes me that some of this might simply be, hey, I went and saw somebody else's pattern, and hers looks professional. So I need to go do that too, because then mine will look professional. And she said copyright in her name, the date, and all rights reserved, and that's what I need to do too. I mean, so maybe it's just simple. Maybe it's copying the copyright.
We also saw with Martingale Publishing. We've looked at their stuff. They put the exact same copyright notice on every single book. So I'd be interested to see what C&T Publishing does, and if they put that on every single book, that they just have legal that they just slap on.
Yeah.
As opposed to really looking at what. So some of these books, this is my favorite, is some of them will be like, you are not allowed to copy it in any way at all, not even any way. And it's paper piecing. So of course, you're like, right, you're just, then all the directions of the book are like, make 5 copies of this. But the copyright notice is like, don't make it even, no copies can be made in any way, in any situation. It's like, okay.
I was like, guys, you realize that you have to violate copyright in order to make that paper piece.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can't, and that's not the way copyright law works. You can't control it like that.
Yeah. So, and that's the second thing I wanted to talk about, is just how can this even be enforced? So, and that's the thing that kind of drives me crazy a little bit about that, is because it's saying that the copyright holder is me, and then that I am saying personal use only. I'm not. That's not what I'm saying at all. But even if it is and somebody interprets it that way, then they might think that I'm going to come after them
Yeah.
I would never, and that's the thing, like, there is no way under any circumstance that I would be going and hiring a lawyer to go after some grandma who's stitching out my designs in a quilt and selling it. I mean, come on.
Right.
Is there even that much profit? That's the thing that I wonder about when I read these draconian copyright policies. Is there even enough profit in that quilter's business to go and attack someone? Or
Right.
is it just all bullying?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping it's misguided bullying. That's what I'm hoping. We're doing, I've been working on this paper on copyright notice, right statements, and sort of what really the game is, and thinking through sort of what is your goal. And the copyright notice and the right statement is a map, so that when I pick up something of yours, I can know sort of what the kind of rules are. And sometimes the rules are not clear, and sometimes the rules you've created, not you, but just in general, are silly. So we're trying to sort of help people understand better what that really is. Like, what do you mean for a right? What do you need to include? What do you not need to include? And what it means, and maybe give some alternatives. Like, if you are a guild and would like to use this work, please contact me. Or if you're doing charity work, feel free to whatever. But that you really communicate to your customer or the quilting world what you really care about with this pattern and understand what that means.
Yeah.
It's silly. It's not a time to be protective of things, because that train has left the station. We already, I mean, the movie industry and sound recordings, the record industry, they're not called the record industry anymore. They're called the music industry, right? Because like people pirated their stuff so much that where they're making money is on concerts. I mean, they'll make some money on them, but they're not trying to. They get that it's impossible on the internet to control. Yeah. Intellectual property.
Absolutely. And the thing that has come up a whole lot from my audience, I've done 2 podcasts on copyright, and the biggest
question, Heather on, right?
Yeah, we had you on. So that was the Hello, My Quilting Friends podcast.
Yes.
And so the major question that keeps coming back is, okay, so I have this pattern and it's a bag, or I have this pattern and it's a really cute quilt with a word on it, or I have this pattern and it's, it's a pillow, and I want to make it and sell it at craft fairs.
Yeah.
And the, so-and-so wrote it, and she put something like, the worst ones are personal use only. You're not allowed to make any profit off of this at all. It violates my copyright if you, make this and make even a penny off of it or something like that. The better ones will say, license up to 10, but usually this copyright policy is printed on the inside of the pattern. And I do believe that it's not even valid. It's not even an actual agreement unless it's on the outside of the pattern, where somebody can buy it in agreement with that policy.
Right. That is a shrink license.
Is any of this going to hold water?
Yeah. Well, I think from my perspective, I back up even further. So if it's a bag or if it's a dress pattern, it's a useful article and it's not protected by copyright.
Yeah. So you can't even copyright the pattern.
So I started there. Well, is it a bag? Well, thank you for making the pattern, and I appreciate it, but you can't restrict my use, because copyright, you can restrict it some other way, I guess, but copyright's not your friend on this. And that's just because we don't do it for recipes, we don't do it for patterns. It's called the useful articles doctrine. Copyright doesn't protect, it protects like buildings, architectural buildings, but not staircases, right? Because we don't want that to be locked up. So that's the first place I started. Then the second place I started is, well, what is the pattern? So if the pattern is just a log cabin and it's so general that all they're doing is helping a beginner learn how to make it, that doesn't really have much copyright either, right? Yeah. Because the directions aren't protected. My kid was saying it was the final outcome is protected, but not how you get there.
Yeah. So, but methods aren't copyrighted either.
Not copyrighted either. So then we're down to, okay, well, this is an incredible, your stuff, your goddess stuff, right? It's really cool, right? So you think, okay, well, where's that line between like the art versus the way to make the art? And, all of that's going to be different for different people. And the technique and the idea of what you're doing isn't protected, but the expression is. So I'm still working on this with quilting is so interesting because we don't really have like others, we probably do, but not to the extent where people are making artwork and then telling you how to do it. And copyright is not really used to that, right? They're like, it's artwork or it's a recipe. And now it's a recipe for the artwork that's really specific. And so I'm still thinking through where that line crosses. And it's complicated. I mean,
the research that I've done on it, and there's a website, taver1.com, has a lot of information just about, copyright and patterns, and even into embroidery designs and all the different layers of this stuff. And I found it really interesting. Basically, they said, if you write a pattern, you are giving away the rights, all the rights. You're giving away the ability to make it. You're giving away duplicate copies, of the thing. Like, you can make that bag 1,000 times because you are basically sharing the recipe for how to do it. And
so that's the distinction. So what's so fascinating about this, right? So pattern makers are really upset because people are stealing their patterns. They're always upset about that, right? Like, someone took my pattern or someone put it up or whatever. They're always like, it's very, very upsetting to them. And I totally get it. I'm not dismissing it. I get it. Like, you worked really hard to make that pattern, and now somebody has made a photocopy of it and not paid you. I get that. But that's the object. They're concerned with the object. Like, right? Like, buy this object. Don't copy the object. But as you said, the directions, I don't know how much control they have over the directions. Now, they might, because you say, oh, it's a derivative work. But I'm not sure. I find it very frustrating and interesting. Like, where does that line? Can you really put for personal use only on a pattern? Now, one of my colleagues says you can if it's a digital copy, but you can't if it's an analog copy because it's software. So this is her theory. So she says if it's a digital copy, it's not a sale. It's a license, like software, that you tell them you cannot, you're not giving them a full right to the work, just a license to use it. And if you're giving a license to use it, you can put whatever restrictions on it you want, like Microsoft Office does with their software.
Yeah, but the person has to agree to that before they buy it, correct?
That's right.
They have to see that.
Right. And they don't do that, right?
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's really interesting, right? And then if you had the hard copy, then it's for sale doctrine. So I even hear people saying that you can't share patterns. I'm like, okay, can you, when I buy a book and I read a book, and then I say, oh, Leah, you have to read this book. I can hand you that book and you can read it. And it turns out you can do that with patterns too, right? I can't make a copy, right? I can't make a copy for you of the whole book, but I can sure say to you, oh, there's a weird thing that just popped up. Why?
You can say, hey, here, share this. I can share this with you. And that's just the natural flow of what people do. You find something good and you share it. I mean, movies, you can't control, like, oh, everyone must buy this DVD, sorry, you're going to buy that DVD and then you're going to go hand it to your grandkids, or you're going to go hand it to your kid, or you're going to go hand it to your friend. You can't control that. I mean, some of this stuff just feels like crazy. Like, guys, do you not understand human nature? People share stuff.
Well, and I also don't think, they share stuff, and quilters share stuff, and we're also super fans. So the idea is that, I may borrow a book that somebody has of yours, but then I'm like, whoa, I really like this. So now I'm going to go to your website, I'm going to buy a whole bunch. So the sharing, it isn't that we're not free writers, right? Because if you're a quilter, you're spending a lot of money all of the time on stuff. And if you can't spend money on it, then you're not even part of the economy anyway, so it's not going to make a difference, right? Yeah. If I have somebody who's like, look, I only get scraps from my friends, and I borrow books, and I can't afford to do this, then you haven't lost the sale from me because I wasn't going to buy it anyway.
Exactly. Right? There wasn't any cash there in the first place.
Yeah, and so I think that, I get it if you post it online and you feel like that's uncool. I get that. That totally, and they should do a notice and take down to the platform and tell them to take it down and send a cease and desist letter and do all those things, because that's a little bit different. But the game, and I think you've figured it out, like I've done 150 interviews. We're getting close to 175 in 6 months or 9 months. It's been insane. I know, and they're hour-long interviews, and it's really amazing, and I'm learning a lot. But you figured it out. A number of you have figured it out. It is not about the intellectual property in your books. It's not about the patterns. It's about things that people will buy, and that they are repeat customers, and that you have a relationship with them. So I think that's where the pattern makers are not understanding, that the game is about consumables and deliverables, things that you will need over and over again.
Yeah.
And that's why you're so amazing, because you figured it out. Right?
Well, I mean, it was pretty simple. Like, I did skincare. I was like a direct sales consultant for a skincare company. And if you want to do direct sales on anything, skincare is good. You know why? Because you use the product, you use it up, you have to reorder. Right. You need more cleanser. You got to go place an order for more cleanser. When you go order the cleanser, you're probably going to go order more hand lotion or something else. That's how it works. When you sell thread, the idea is people will run out of thread and come back and buy more. And there is a point where sometimes it's like, okay, well, then it gets to be too much. I've seen block parties and, quilt-alongs and stuff that require multiple rulers and multiple specialty things. And it can get instead of, it can get a little bit, the quote, shearing a sheep versus skinning it. Mm-hmm. I have met some quilting professionals that like to skin their sheep and, $300-400 just to participate in a class, a single 2-day class. And I left feeling gouged. I can only imagine what the rest of the class felt like. I can write it off. Right. So I think that there's a balance here. I mean, you can't go too far with it. But certainly how I make a living is I create a book or, a pattern, and then I teach you how to do it via video. I then create extra products, like I've just gotten into quilting rulers that help support that as an extra product. It's an optional kind of thing, so you could market and do it with walking foot quilting. You don't have to buy the ruler. Same thing, if there's a cutting template, you can always make that template out of freezer paper, but a lot of quilters want to buy the template. So there's other options and ways that you can add value. But I gotta say, some of the stuff does get expensive to manufacture, and you have to kind of be careful of cost and stuff. And it gets back to having a lot of stuff sitting on the shelf that's not selling, that doesn't do you any good, that doesn't do your business any good. You got to kind of keep a balance going. And also, I'm always looking at value. If the quilt-along requires several $100s of investment, there's not going to be that many people that are able to participate or would want to.
Well, and I think on the flip side of it, if you keep pushing, and so rulers are the thing that people are pushing right now, because I suspect because the cost has come down on them, they're easier to make now. Like everybody has a ruler. Everybody, and like it's like ridiculous. Like if you go to Quilt Market or whatever, like every pattern is like, and buy the ruler. And you have to be careful, because if we buy a lot of rulers and they don't really help, we're not gonna be buying rulers. Yeah. And so that, I think, is the flip side of it, is that we'll only, we're going to only buy so much stuff that we're going to be like, that's not really useful, right? So
yeah.
And that we trust you. So if you start to sell us rulers all the time and they really aren't that helpful, we'll be like, I'm not buying any more rulers. But if we say, when she puts out a ruler, because that's what it is a trust relationship with you. We trust. You've taught us, we understand, we follow you because we believe that you are going to help us, and that's your brand, right? That you're teaching us and helping us, and I don't think that people necessarily get that it's a relationship that they're building, as opposed to here's my pattern, buy it.
Yeah. And I think sometimes too, and I'm a part of several groups, pattern designers and that kind of thing. And there seems to be a lot of, they kind of spend a lot of their time, at least it seems to me, like going and looking at other people's stuff and kind of judging them, like, oh, she's charging too little. Oh, she's charging too much. Oh, so-and-so said they're not doing free patterns anymore. And, so-and-so said that she's only charging this amount. I mean, it's like they're kind of focused so much on the outside. They're not really working on the, their own brand and their own stuff. I do have to say, just a quick aside, I do think that you got to be careful with social media and kind of how strung out you get with all that stuff. We're going to be pulling back in on a lot of that stuff where, like we've had groups and Facebook groups and stuff like that. I'm going to slowly be disbanding those, because if you think about it, creating an alternative place for people to go and participate off your blog, off your website, that's not where you want them to be. Yeah. That's on Facebook. That's contributing to Facebook's place.
Right.
So I don't want them there.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So we're doing a sew-along. The Quilting Army wanted to do a sew-along. They all found Jen Kingwell's pattern on the Gypsy Wife. They wanted to do it. I was like, oh my gosh, okay. Was not prepared for this at all. But it was fine. So we did it, and we have, I'm participating, but I'm not in charge of it, which is super great. But it brought, what was really interesting is we got a bump in our Facebook group. We had to start a private group because there was some brouhaha over the pattern issue stuff. It was silly. But we have a private group that's got, I don't remember, but our email list, which is where you really sign up for the newsletter and all the things, we're up to, a couple days ago, 172 people. And I know that's not a lot, but it kind of was interesting that like they ended up migrating, and it's a lot less than our Facebook group, and our YouTube channel's only got 23 people watching it, subscribe to it, but it's the newsletter. And you've been saying that a lot. I mean, everyone keeps telling me it's the newsletter and bringing them to our website, and that's actually what's happened organically with this project, which I thought was really interesting.
And you really don't want, honestly, I've been looking personally at Facebook and it's kind of become a toxic waste dump. I honestly, I do my best to post positive things about quilting on topic, even to my personal profile. Yeah. Hey, Facebook is, as far as I'm concerned, standing out on the street shouting. that is my mentality about social media. Whatever you put out there, you're doing it in your front yard where everyone can see it.
That's right.
And I think a lot of people don't have that mentality, and there's just a lot of garbage there, and it's not any fun. It's become a toxic waste dump. And I'm pulling back and saying, like, look, where I want people to be is my website. Where I want people to be is my blog or YouTube watching videos.
Right.
I have monetized my videos. It took me years to do that. And I finally monetized everything because I realized, a lot of people will watch. They're not going to go buy a book. They're not going to go buy a pattern. If I can make, a penny off of someone watching a video, then that's still going to support my business. Yeah. That's not a criminal thing to do. Right. So that's how I set it up. So I'm going to be pulling back from Facebook in a big way, simply because I don't think it's necessarily positive. I know a lot of quilters can be quilting and watching YouTube at the same time. They can set it up next to their sewing machine. I don't know anybody that control Facebook while also quilting.
Yeah. No, it's totally true. It really is. And it's such a time suck that it's an interesting medium. But we are, and also as it gets bigger, because we're not that big. So, we saw a bump when we got close to 1,000, like it was really different. And so we're trying to keep that, like, can you keep that same feeling as when it was 50? As it grows, and I don't know. Like, we'll see.
Yeah, you can't. And then you start missing things. That's the thing that I started realizing, is that I'm actually missing real questions, like real legitimate questions from people that are needing help, and I'm missing them because of the whole feed thing. And then it's also, if you think about it, okay, so you have a post. Let's say you put a post up on your blog that is about block number 1, okay? Right. And there's the tutorial, and you read through it, and then there's the comments at the bottom. That's the most logical place for questions and answers to be posted, because that is timely. If someone comes to that post in 10 years, they're going to be able to find it, scroll down to the bottom. If they have a question, they might be able to find their question and already see that it's answered. Right. Now, you take that to a off-site to a Facebook group that is dependent upon a feed. It's going to be a million miles down on the bottom. You won't even be able to search it and find it. Half of it's going to be deleted anyway. It's not logical. And I'll be honest, I got into the whole Facebook thing back in 2014, and it was due to a quilt-along, and I had a lot of requests for it, and I didn't know any better, and I just kind of said, sure, we'll do this. And it was like, I mean, I love my followers. I really, really do. I mean, I'm passionate about teaching quilting, but I really feel like you've got to retain control and anonymity over how things work. And I kind of feel like that I let things go.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, I let go of my control. And then almost immediately, everybody's posting cat pictures and dog pictures and like off-topic stuff. It's not even about the quilt-along. So then they demanded a second group. Yeah. And like to the point of like anarchy, like, no, we want a second group so we can talk about anything. So then I'm like on the couple of
yes. Yeah. Well, I get it. I mean, I find it really interesting, and I keep trying to embrace the chaos. Like I create a lot of chaos, so I'm trying to embrace it. But it also isn't my job. I mean, my job is to observe it, and I think if it was like my job, I would be freaking out. But because it's like I'm supposed to be observing it for my job, it's more, so I get it. Yeah. Like something will pop up and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I have to look like back up and be like, okay.
Yeah.
But it's
and
mental panic,
keeping it clean is the biggest thing. Keeping it clean, keeping bots out of it, keeping porn. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but keeping porn out of my groups has been a challenge over the years.
Really?
And it has basically, it takes like an hour of my husband's time every day just to sort through an hour, just to sort through the different people that are trying to get in the group.
Oh, yeah, we do that too.
And, people that are being mean to one another. It's like, I feel like part of my job now is to be nanny to a whole bunch there. I don't feel like I'm able to respond to comments in a timely fashion because of the tagging whole thing. Like, sometimes I don't get notified even when I get tagged in a post. Yeah. So it's kind of like, well, what's the point with this? I mean, I would see a comment on my blog. I would see a comment on my website immediately, and I'm missing it when it's all on Facebook. So it just makes the most logical sense.
And you're just at such a different level, and that totally makes, it makes tons and tons and tons of sense. All right, so I have to ask you about your the 15R. So mine is actually a 14 plus, but they've kind of recently rebranded it to a 15R. Right. Basically, they kind of offer two different versions of the Grace Unique long arm. They offer a manual one. They offer a stitch regulated one. You have the stitch regulated one, right? Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Tell me how it's going.
Well, I'm a beginner, so it's going well. My alphabet's going. I'm great at the alphabet, but it's a lot of work. I mean, I think it's like anything. It takes a lot of skill. It takes a lot of time. I felt like it was an enemy for a little while, but I'm feeling a little bit more like it's a friend. But we haven't fallen. We're still working it out. So it's a bumpy relationship. And it should be at school, but they haven't found big enough space for us. So it's in our upstairs living room, which is ridiculous. So it kind of haunts the house. But other than that, it's good. I mean, I'm really glad, and I'm super grateful. All Brands, which is a local shop, helped us. They did a partial donation to Tulane so that we could.
Excellent.
And so community people come over on Thursdays and Fridays and experience it and play and all that. So that's been really interesting to watch people do that. So,
yeah, and it's so different. It is moving the machine versus moving the quilt underneath the needle. Yeah. I'd say the number one thing is just quilt every day.
Yeah.
And then the thing about long arms that I think is the hardest thing for beginners to get used to, especially if you've been on a home machine for a really long time, is the tension. Tension on a long arm can go out between one bobbin and the next. It can go out just turning on the machine. Thread might have popped out of a guide. Something could have happened. Every time you turn on the machine to start the day, double check your threading. Every time that you start stitching after, it's been a pause, take the machine over to the side and do a little stitch out on like a little square off in the batting section. And just double check yourself, take a look. It's right there on the edge. Take a look underneath the quilt and make sure. And then every bobbin change, do the same thing. Take the machine over to the side.
I did have a disaster with that where I had to do a lot of ripping out because I hadn't realized that things had gotten bad. So,
yeah, it's real easy to get things off. No, I think that I meant to tell you about Ingram Spark and how I do books now.
So we got off topic. Okay,
I think we got off topic.
S&T, that's right. Okay, so we'll do that. So this is good. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All right. So yes.
Okay. So this is this book. So this is my most recent book that just came out in November last year. Explore Walking Foot Quilting with Leah-Day. And I knew from the beginning that I wanted to go 100% self-publishing or independent publishing if you don't like the word self. And so I decided to do a new system with it. And this is very different from how I've done all my other books. Basically created two different versions of the book. And I did pay to have this book laid out for me because it is set up like a, very, a traditional, colored pictures, kind of quilt book. And I paid to have someone do that for me. And honestly, after that experience, I will now lay out my books myself.
Really?
Because it gets back to that control thing. We ended up on a tight deadline, and the person that I had hired, had been able to do some stuff, but was not capable of kind of producing the final book. She didn't read through the requirements that were necessary that I gave her at the beginning to upload to Ingram Spark. And then we kind of got caught with a book file that we couldn't use. And it was a nightmare. And it pushed us right to the deadline. Like we needed to have books shipping out on December 1st. And we were still getting galleys, like sample copies back before Thanksgiving. I mean, it was a nightmare. So I will say I will lay out the next book myself. I will learn that skill in Adobe. InDesign is the program that is industry standard. But basically what we did was got an ISBN You can buy one. You can buy sets of them. I usually buy them at 10 at a time. And I think 10 is like $300 some odd. So, you know, it's a little bit of an investment, but it's nice to have lots of ISBNs. So that way, if you write one book, you really need to write 10. That's how the game works. Had an ISBN. If your cover and the binding is the same, then you can use the same ISBN on both Ingram Spark and CreateSpace. So that's what I did. I used a glossy finish, perfect bind is what I did. I would probably do matte finish next time around because I noticed some of the books just can kind of get scuffed up real easy when it's glossy finish. That's just like a personal aside. Yeah. But as long as the bind and the cover finish is the same and the covers are identical, then they are the same book ostensibly, and you can use the same ISBN. You want to use your own ISBN in order to get the expanded distribution, and that is distribution so that your book will sell internationally in all markets via Ingram Spark. So you upload it. It's a bit of a confusing process. I will tell you very honestly, it's not easy. Yeah. You can gag and just call the company and be nice, and hopefully they will get it ungagged. You might have to upload it again. It takes, it's a process to get it approved. Once it's approved, then you can order yourself a sample copy. I highly recommend sample copies because something can happen, especially if you're going to have a full bleed with color photos. Yeah. Definitely go with the highest level of color copy where they're printing it with the highest resolution. That's going to look the best. It's going to be the most expensive, but it's going to look the best. And get yourself a sample copy. Sometimes that might take 2 or 3 tries to make sure that you've got everything all sorted out and the layout looks good and you haven't missed any typos, that kind of thing. On Ingram Spark, you're going to select all of the distribution, and you can actually set it so that everyone that buys gets the proper 50% discount whenever they are a business and they want to order from you. That is different from CreateSpace. CreateSpace is an Amazon company, and really it's designed to help you sell on Amazon. It's not really designed to help you sell internationally. You will not be able to discount your book enough to really be, make distributors and booksellers happy. So what you'll do is do the expanded distribution in Ingram, and then when you upload the book to CreateSpace, just do Amazon.com for CreateSpace, only selling there. And then that way the two won't conflict, basically. The two won't conflict. And then you will make essentially the maximum amount no matter where your book sells. And I was actually really surprised. I was not expecting very much through expanded distribution. And I'm probably cashing about a $300 check or so every month just through expanded distribution on one book. That's surprising to me. That's really surprising to me.
That's really good. And the cost of the book is pretty significant because it's long and it's super colorful. So
it costs about, I'm trying to think, I want to say it's about $6 to print. Maybe it's either $6 or $8. And then it adds another $2 per book to ship it. So you have to also keep in mind shipping costs.
Right.
And then, and this gets into the logistics side of things. You cannot ignore the logistics because that can murder the profit off your book. Yeah. And I will be honest, I completely messed up the logistics on this calendar. And so I'm speaking from personal experience experienced this week. So basically what happens, you need to have that sample copy of the real book so that way you can weigh it. And then you can see the size of it. And so that way you can see, okay, can this go in a regular padded envelope, or is this over 13 ounces and needs to go priority mail in a white priority mail puffy mailer? It's the puffy mailer, then you need to order those in advance from USPS.com. And it takes time. It's not like an instantaneous thing. They take their time getting those to you, and you have a limit of how many you can order per day or per week. So we calculated wrong on this thing. I thought that this would fit a number 1 envelope, which is the size of a small envelope. It turned out because of the coil, it was much bigger. And so we have 400 envelopes that we can't ship out today. I'm not kidding. I mean, it's awful. And then, so they're having to go in different envelopes. And then we only had a few of the proper puffy mailers. So we're losing like $3 or $4 just in shipping costs. Wow. And because it's heavier than I thought too, we only charge $6 shipping, and it's going for upwards of $9 to $10. So, I mean, that's $4 coming out of our pocket, out of the profit. So we're kind of breaking even on this thing.
Wow.
You know?
That's great.
It's one thing to be able to sell 300 copies of something, and that's great. It's a wonderful ability to be able to do. But unless you have the logistical back end set up to take care of that, it's going to be a nightmare. And because we didn't get a sample of this, I never saw it. The first time I saw this was yesterday.
That's craziness.
Yeah, and so I had no idea, and I just went off of the size and the weight that was listed on the CNT website. Turns out it was a guesstimation.
No.
I mean, like, okay, I'm a guest learning experience there. I didn't know that would be a guesstimation
Oh my God.
of weight or size. So, okay, that's cool. Yeah, and right now, and I can't emphasize enough that this will, this adds chaos. So all of those boxes were delivered in the middle of a thunderstorm to my carport yesterday afternoon, in between, my son was at summer camp and then going to karate. So it's like we're trying to navigate everything. I'm hauling boxes in the house to stop them from getting rained on. And then now I have 100 packages sitting on my kitchen counters. I mean, this will transform your house.
I totally get that. I do. It's part of the experience. Well, I think this is really interesting. When we get we're going to send out a survey to pattern people to sort of see what their thoughts are. I'm hopefully going to get this. This is the first chapter that we're running for the book because it seemed like a good place to start on copyright notice and right statement. I would love for you to take a look. It shouldn't be that long, but I would love for you to look and see.
I would love to see it.
I love you are so incredible, and your view on things are so spot on. In my personal opinion, you're just like fabulous, beyond fabulous. So,
oh, thank you.
Yeah, you really get it. You get what this is, and you get the reality of it, and you still smile. So it's amazing.
Well, the advice that I have for everyone, whether you're a maker or a pattern designer or whoever, is just to please tap into the fact that there is so much to go around, and we are so lucky to have this amazing world, and we are all so abundant. Yeah. And if ever you start to focus on the lack and feel like you're in a box and things are no fun anymore, please open up your world and realize that you can do anything that you want. Just stop trying to control it. Yeah. You can't control it.
Understand what the game is now, because the game isn't about controlling copies of things. That happened. That stopped like 1994, 1995. Like that's when that happened.
The point is to share something beautiful and hope that it takes off and that you see 1 million copies of it, because that lets you know that you touched a lot more people and that you impacted all of those lives in a positive way. Like, you want your stuff to go viral, because then that comes back to you in a major way too. I really quickly, I wanted to tell you at the very end, I've been writing a fiction novel.
Yes, I can't wait to see it.
And so this is what I'm hoping will go viral. I mean, I really want this to take off. So the name is Mally the Maker, and I've been working on this book since October last year, and it's my first fiction novel, and it is going to be a series. It's about a little girl who goes on an adventure inside of a quilt.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah, she's looking for her grandma who went missing 6 months ago. What happened to grandma?
That's so great. And is it pitched? Where is it pitched? Who is the book for?
It's really for quilters. It's for quilters. It's written for quilters. So if you like quilting fiction already, this is more quilt fantasy. But it is about a 10-year-old little...
Quilt fiction, such a thing.
Yeah.
It's so cool. I can't wait to read it. That's so great. When do you think it'll come out?
I am right now working on the illustrations, and they're almost done. I have a little bit more editing to do, and then we're going to start the pre-order probably on September the 1st and be shipping on October 1st.
That is so cool.
And then book 2, we're going to kind of set up this as a system, and it'll be a multi-book series, and I'm thrilled to write it. And it's a story, it's a little girl's story of learning how to stitch. The first book's going to be a lot about quilting and stitching and hand sewing. And then I'm going to do a lot of tutorials geared towards a very beginner audience. And it's all about handwork, all that kind of good stuff.
Oh, that's so great. Will you come back when we get closer to it and chat about the book? I would love it. It would be great.
That would be awesome.
So clever. That's so great. It's so great. Thank you for chatting. I really appreciate it. We are going to be doing our book. We're trying to get 2 books done. So we're trying to get a big one that's really about the sort of, and then a little teeny tiny one for quilters, so they just can know like the big basics. Like they don't have to read, they don't have to know anything. They just like turn it and know little bit. So we'll keep you posted on how we're doing on that, but we're hoping.
I would love to. Yeah, that would be great. And it would be so great to have a resource where when people are confused or starting battles online, that I can just point them, like, please go read this, please.
I know we got to go, but I had a really good experience recently where someone said, I'm really mad that they took my X. And I'm like, well, that math's not protected. I'm like, and historians have it worse because facts and theories aren't protected, and it sucks. I get it. It sucks. I'm a historian by training. And they were like, oh, okay. And then they just moved on. So it was really interesting. It was like, okay, well, maybe if you have knowledge about how the system actually works, you won't be so stressed about it. Because,
Exactly. There's nothing to feel bad about.
No, it's not personal.
We just want to quilt. It's all going to be awesome.
Yeah, exactly. We just want to quilt. You're awesome. You made my day. Thank you so much for chatting.
Aww, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Do you want to review this if we post it, or are you cool with? Do you want it posted, or are you?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't give you an F-bomb or anything.
Yeah, but you know what? When they do, and Pam Weeks did, when we do and we put explicit, our ratings go up.
Really?
Yes.
Oh man.
So you gotta be like swearing about things. So the curator of New England Quilt Museum did a lot of swearing. So I'm hoping that our numbers are
The curator for the Quilt Museum swore a lot. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I've got to listen to that one.
Isn't that the greatest? They're like, yes, we want to be explicit. We are explicit quilters. We are naughty.
Oh, that is hilarious. I got to tell my husband that. He's gonna have a fun time with that one.
So it has a little explicit label on it when you go to it. It's so great.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a great day.
Oh, you too. Take care. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So this is Elizabeth Townsend Guard. You've been listening to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School. We want to hear from you. Join our army, our quilting army. Go to our Facebook page. Suggest people